Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video for the When Life Feels Messy channel. In this episode, we're going to really be talking about how do we go about finding mental health providers outside of our TWU CAPS department and campus. And there's a couple different reasons why and when we would need to do this. Most obviously would be because you're not going to be a TWU student forever. And so your mental health journey is going to far extend just your time as a college student here. So we hope that this video is just informative and allows you to feel like you have more of a direction and idea of how to go about finding someone, especially in a sea of so many different mental health providers. And we just hope that in this video, you take away of an understanding of the process that you would take and what's kind of best for you in terms of looking for a mental health provider outside of TWU. So in thinking about, okay, what would constitute a need for me to find an outside provider? Well, great question. There are a couple different things. First off would be that, of course, you're not going to be a student here at TWU forever. Another thing would be that our TWU CAPS is not equipped to handle every kind of mental health disorder and issue that exists. So thinking about what does the TWU CAPS scope of therapy look like, we thought it would be helpful for you to kind of have an idea of how we operate and the services and capacity that we have in our department. So the first thing would be is that we offer brief therapy, which means that there are limited sessions. So when you utilize TWU CAPS therapy, this is not something where it's going to be long-term, as in years and years and years, which is what people have in an outside referral therapist. This is someone that sometimes they have the same therapist throughout like their life or for a substantial amount of time to work on various different things. But given that we are in a higher education place and our students are constantly rotating in and out and we're getting new waves of students, the students are graduating, leaving, we operate from a brief therapy model, which means that when you come to CAPS to work on things, this is looking at things that can be worked on and accomplished in a brief therapy context. So not necessarily things that are going to take more extensive in-depth therapy and time, but more so things that either can be resolved in a limited number of sessions or can start being processed in a way that helps you to be able to function and to be able to continue being successful in your college program here at TWU. Another thing is obviously you're not going to be a TWU student forever, and that it is only for current TWU students. So if you take a semester break or when you graduate or things like that, our services aren't going to be able to be accessible to you. And that's not always really helpful. Maybe during a semester break is when you really need to be seeing and getting mental health services. And so having an outside therapist and someone who's not confined to your status as a student here at TWU can be really helpful. Another thing is that more severe treatments, especially treatments that would need like inpatient services, is not applicable in our CAPS setting. We do not have the resources, the staffing, or the ability to work with severe disorders. So in all honesty, it would be something that wouldn't be very helpful to you, and it would be more of a service to give those referrals for an outside person or facility that would be more helpful to that. Another big thing is that students are assigned to a therapist based on your availability and your presenting concerns. So versus the outside world, there are a plethora of therapists with all different kinds of backgrounds, diversity, different treatment modalities and things like that, which is wonderful. But our CAPS team is not necessarily going to ever be able to represent fully the full scope of mental health, like diversity and different things out there. So if you're someone that's like, I only want, let's say, for example, a therapist that identifies as African American, lesbian, cisgender woman who specializes in ACT. Well, the odds of that being someone on our CAP staff is honestly very unlikely. Now, there might be elements of it. We might have a therapist on staff who is an African American woman or identifies as lesbian, but the odds of having those all specific together tend to be hard because we do have a limited number of staff. So if you're someone that knows this is the type of therapist I want to work with, this is the elements of them that I want to be present, then it can be helpful and necessary to have an outside referral where you can find someone who fits that criteria for you. And then the last thing is referring to outside and continuing therapy is part of our scope of CAPS because we know that this is not long-term therapy in what you are doing with our staff and team while here at TWU. So we make it a part of the therapy and treatment to talk about referrals and to have that open conversation from the beginning and give you the resources and tools needed to be able to do that. And thinking about when you're looking for outside referrals, right? And before you start the process of knowing what are really like the top things I need to do and be aware of to make this search successful for me. The first thing that we recommend is do your research, right? Think of this as like if you were researching places to work, and job opportunities and the people and the environment that works there. Think of finding a therapist like that. It's important for you to look at what are your options and to really spend time reflecting with yourself on the type of therapist that you want. Do you want someone that specializes in a certain treatment or modality or works with a specific mental health issue and has a lot of experience with that? Do you want someone that identifies as a specific part of maybe a BIPOC or LGBTQ plus community? There are a lot of different things and specifications that could be really important to you. So we recommend first of definitely doing that process and reflecting in yourself to figure that out, and then doing your research of what exactly are my options out there and looking into starting to look at the therapist and the providers sites and what they give as little blurbs about themselves and the details on their experience. Like, definitely make sure that you're doing your research and not necessarily just going with the first one that pops up on the screen. The next thing would be utilize phone consults. So a lot of the time, mental health providers will offer free 15-minute phone consults. And these can be so helpful, especially because in that phone call, it's really a great way to, one, see if the vibe is there between you and the therapist. See if you like how it feels when the therapist is talking to you. Do you feel warm and inviting from this person? Do you feel like it's a little bit cold and blunt and standoffish? What is the vibe there, right? And it's also a really great way to not spend money, but ask questions that maybe you want a little bit more information about this therapist and how they work in a clinical setting. So definitely utilize those if they are available by a provider. And that could be something that maybe you make a part of when I'm narrowing my search. I want to make sure the provider and therapist I go through does offer the phone consults. Could be a way to help weed out some options there. And then the last thing is check your insurance coverage. So of course, not everyone's going to have insurance or even insurance that covers mental health services. But if you do have insurance, definitely look into it and see, because it can be so cost effective. I mean, we know mental health services are not cheap, right? And that is a lot of time a huge barrier in terms of outside referrals and seeking mental health services, is because of the price. So if you have insurance that cuts the cost down dramatically and you only have to pay a copay or a decreased rate, definitely look into that. Another thing to be too is if you are in a financial, bind or situation of there are options out there of therapists that provide a sliding scale. Now, what is a sliding scale? That is where therapists, will look at what is your income, what is your capability financially to pay for sessions, and they'll work with you based on your budget to provide a lower fee for you to be able to pursue mental health services. So if that's something that is definitely important to you and would help in being able to find and pursue mental health services outside of CAPS, definitely utilize this and check what your coverage is and looking into individuals and providers that have that sliding scale fee. Okay, so we've talked about, what is kind of the game plan and things to do when looking for outside referrals and starting to look for potential mental health therapists and options outside of CAPS. So we want to kind of walk through an example of looking through a really popular referral website, and just to give you an idea of how to go about even starting the process. So we are going to look at, in this example, Psychology Today, which you might have heard of, you might not have, but it's a really popular site of where mental health providers from all different degrees and paths. So it's LPCs, licensed professional counselors, licensed clinical social workers, you got some marriage and family therapists, you have psychologists, psychiatrists, like a lot of different providers are posting on this site. I would say that this is probably the most common site that's referred to. And so we're going to walk through that and kind of give you a visual on how to go about utilizing the site to the best for you to be able to find options and how to go about navigating, reaching out to potential providers and seeing if it could be a good fit for you. Okay, so like we talked about, we want to show you just an example, a visual of one of the more popular sites that we use and share with students when we refer them out for longer term therapy or just finding another therapist when they're done with TWU and CAPS altogether. So we'll be looking at Psychology Today as the example, and literally it is just psychologytoday.com. You can Google it and it will pop up. Like I mentioned earlier, it is a pretty popular site. So you will see this come up as one of the top things if you're Googling it. So this is what the landing page looks like. And there's a couple different things that can be really useful to you. Of course, what our agenda in talking about this is finding a therapist, but there are really helpful articles and like light readings that you can do that are also can be really helpful. You can also sign up to receive a magazine monthly, which might be biased, but I feel like it has really good information and it just talks about a lot of real life stuff and not ideas that necessarily super high complex psychology stuff, but things that affect your everyday and could be useful to you. So you see there's a couple different things up here. Find a therapist, a quick way to get into that site. Get help. There's access to different things here. You can do some tests. You can look at different kind of mental health and things. And so let's say anxiety is something that you're really struggling with. You can click that, and what's really great is it'll give you a little blurb and information about what is anxiety, giving you more information. Look at all this. It tells you about signs and symptoms, causes, gives you a really good idea about anxiety. So if you're oh, I don't know if I have anxiety, or I'm trying to figure out what I have, it's really nice that they have this information all in one place. You can see connected things that you can look into. It'd be post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, things like that. So really helpful information on here that definitely utilize. But of course, for this video and purpose, we are going to look at finding a therapist. So what we're gonna do, you can do it either clicking here, or you'll see it's down here. We are gonna start our search. So if you see right here, it says therapist. This is what I was talking about in terms of there's a lot of different individuals and professionals on here. You can look for a psychiatrist. You can look for a specific treatment center. If you are needing inpatient, outpatient, you can look for support groups. So this is not just about finding an individual therapist. This is really helpful in general for your mental health journey. So for this example, we're just going to look for a therapist. And I'm just going to, for this example, use Houston. And we will click in that, and you will see immediately it pops up with a large list of individuals. If we scroll down here, you'll see this is not just 10 pages, it goes and goes and goes. That's where that overwhelming part kind of comes in. But what I really want to highlight here is what we've been talking about in terms of when you do your research is, remember we talked about really figuring out what it is that is important to you and your therapist. So this could be specific qualities about your therapist. This could be if they specialize in something. And so what I want to show is that right here, you'll see all these little bubbles is where we can start really filtering out and getting more specific about what we're looking for. So let's just say for this example, we are looking for someone that works with anxiety. We'll look for someone maybe that works with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Again, if you have insurance, check that and see what that coverage is like. Let's see. Let's show someone who is identifies as a woman. Types of therapy, we'll do CBT. I mean, as you see, like the list is already changing. It's changed a couple different times since I've been clicking these buttons. This is saying the populations and age ranges that these mental health providers work with. So let's say, for example, if you were a parent or, you know, maybe an older sibling or something looking for a therapist for your younger sibling, you can filter that out and show which age ranges, and it'll show you people who work with that specific age, because not every mental health provider works with children, and not every mental health provider works with adults or elders. So that's a way that you can filter it out too. You can also filter it out by price. Remember, we talked about that sliding scale, so that is an option to click, and it will show people that do offer that sliding scale. And I'll show you in just a minute what that looks like. And then there's even more things you can do. You can filter it out by individuals that work with the LGBTQ plus community, specific ethnicities, speaking languages, certain face. So there's so many different filters that you can do that could really help give you an idea of someone to work with. So for this example, I'm just going to pick this one because it is the first one that's popped up. So you'll see, you can click. Usually people will have their picture. We know the impact of seeing someone's face and being able to put a name to the face kind of just helps that personal approach. So for this, it is highlighting that this individual mental health professional works at Cultivating Hope Counseling Services, or that could be their business name. But it will have a couple different things on here. You'll be able to see what their title. So this is a licensed professional counselor. They're also a licensed marriage and family therapist associate. If you don't understand the acronyms, you can Google that and find out what they mean. But the most common ones you're going to see are LPC, LMFT, LCSW, which is a social worker, psychologist, psychiatrist. It'll also show if they put their pronouns on here. This verified by Psychology Today is thinking about like social media, you know, when you have that little blue check mark. This just means that Psychology Today has verified that these individuals are professionals, and this is legitimate. So this will give a little blurb about the person. This is where you can get to know them a little bit more. This will show where they're located, their contact information. You can see there's multiple options to email them, show where their location is. They offer online therapy, and you can click this on some of the profiles and it should take you to if they have a website, which is another way to just get more information about that person or the counseling place that you are interested in. So see, just gives a little bit more information. So that's always really helpful if you want to get a more idea about the person. You can see these are where they list their top specialties, but then also the other issues that they work with, sexuality. So if it's very important to you that you work with a therapist that has experience working with the LGBTQ plus community, that will be on here as well. This is where you can find fee information. That sliding scale part comes up. So this is something where this provider, you will be able to talk with them or the counseling office, depending on how they do scheduling, about the sliding scale option, and they can give you more ideas of what exactly that percentage and fee would look like using the sliding scale. They also will put what kind of insurance plans they take. So if you know, hey, I have Aetna, or hey, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield, you can check with your insurance provider and also with these individuals and their counseling places to verify that you have mental health coverage and might just have to pay a copay or whatever that looks like. There will be a part of qualifications, so talking about the license, where they got their degree from, how long they've been in the field, any certificates, if they speak other languages, the ages, the communities that they work with, and their treatment approaches. So we talked about earlier, if you're wanting someone that works specifically with a specific type of treatment, this is where the professionals will highlight what treatments they kind of operate from. So this is just an example of a profile. There are many, many more, as you can see. And so this is why it's really important to do the time to do the research, really get to know the individuals that you're like, oh, from looking at their profile, I'm thinking, yes, I'd want to reach out and see about getting more information, or maybe no, and move on and keep looking. So another point I will make is don't just only click one. I would say definitely reach out to a couple different people, because you never know. Sometimes these individuals are full or at capacity right now, or they just might take a little bit of time before they respond. And so you don't want to just wait around forever in the case that you don't get a response. But this is just an example of how to utilize this. Again, you can look at other different things. So if you see up here, you can look for support groups. So if we were to just type in Houston again, you can see just like a list of different support groups that are being offered. Again, you can filter it by what exactly you're looking for. So is this a group for preteens, teens, or adults? Is this a group for LGBTQ plus? So you'll be able to look at that and get more information. You'll also be able to find treatment centers and psychiatrists in your area. So definitely utilize this and other sites, but we hope that walking through this was really helpful for you. Okay, so as we're kind of wrapping up this video, we just kind of walked through Psychology Today and gave you a good idea of how to operate the website. We'll say that a lot of the websites have a similar function and look to them. So hopefully by walking through Psychology Today, it kind of gives you a good basis for when you look at potential other sites. And we did want to give you multiple referral website options to look into. So of course, Psychology Today is the one we just looked at. Some other good ones that our CAPS staff has recommended or refers students to pretty often is OnePath, Good Therapy, e-counseling, and therapy den. And so when we talked about earlier of doing your research and looking into, the providers and options out there, you don't have to stick to just one site. You can take a gander at multiple sites on here, because not always do providers post on each one. So sometimes you can find different people on one website versus the other. So we recommend definitely giving these a peek, seeing, maybe a website seems more user-friendly to you and is easier to manage. Maybe you like it more aesthetically. Maybe you see more providers on there that fit your needs. So definitely wanted to offer some options for you to look into, and we hope that these are helpful. Last thing for this video, we just wanted to end on a note of reminders, right? So first thing is really just acknowledge and affirm yourself for taking this big step in your mental health journey, especially because this can be so overwhelming, and it's something that can seem really confusing at first, and do I want to do this? It seems like there's just a lot going on, and a lot of options, and not really sure where to go. Give yourself that acknowledgement and affirmation to even be wanting to take this step for yourself. This is self-care. This is you showing yourself some love and doing something that's good for you. Another thing is, it is okay to feel overwhelmed by the amount of mental health providers and choices that are out there. And that can come up, that can happen. And in those moments, remind yourself that it's okay that I feel overwhelmed. There are overwhelming amount of choices, and maybe this is a time that I should ground myself, take a step back, do some breathing, maybe walk away from it, go look at something else, and then come back when I'm in a better headspace to do so. Also, really spend the time with yourself thinking and reflecting on what type of therapist that you want to work with. Like we talked about earlier, think of this like when you're looking for job opportunities and you're researching the employer and the place and the people that work there and their mission and everything. Really spend time thinking about what's important to you. Is it important to you that your therapist holds the same religious values and operates from a faith-based type of counseling work? Is it important to you that they identify as a woman? Is it important that they identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community? These are all really important things to have in mind for you as you make this search, because this is something for you that will probably mean I feel like I would connect more and be able to be vulnerable and open up with this person. Another thing, we talked about this, is researching and utilizing your insurance coverage if applicable. Also looking into sliding scale fee. If that's something that is going to be vital for you to be able to seek mental health services, then make that a priority and part of what you do in your research here. Take advantage of those free phone consults. Make sure that the vibe is there with the therapist. Do yourself a favor here by taking the time to do this and making sure that this is a good fit for you. And be honest if the vibe isn't there. You could be in an intake or your first, second, maybe even 10th session, and feel like, hey, I'm just not really vibing with this therapist. That's okay. Be honest about that. You do not have to stick with a therapist just because that's the one that you started with in this process. It happens that you don't really feel like you can connect with a therapist, and maybe you give it a chance for a little bit and you're like, I just don't feel like I'm getting something out of this, and that's okay. So be honest with yourself and be honest with your therapist. And lastly, we just wanted to thank you again for tuning into this video for When Life Feels Messy. We really hope that this video is just informative and gives you a little bit of guidance and direction on how to go about looking for outside referrals. We know that that can be very overwhelming and a scary process. So please refer back to this video, share it with your friends, your peers, family, whoever, because this can be useful for anyone as you navigate this process and journey. And with that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.